Newsbreak, brought to you by National Mutual. This is National 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
A grieving royal family shares the world's disbelief and shock following the death of Princess Diana and her friend Dodi Fayed. Good evening. The world tonight is still trying to come to terms with the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. She died earlier today after a high-speed crash in Paris, which killed her friend Dodi Al Fayed and their driver. Britain is a country in mourning for its favourite princess.
Buckingham Palace this morning, and flowers for a princess. The disbelief over Diana's death has now turned into a wave of grief that is sweeping the country. A death that has touched members of the public and a Prime Minister mourning the death of a princess he called a friend.
I feel like everyone else in this country today, utterly devastated. Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her two sons, the two boys.
Prince Charles, who was informed of Diana's death early this morning, woke his two sons, the Princes William and Harry, and told them of their mother's death. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace has been growing steadily. There have been tributes too outside Diana's London home, Kensington Palace.
Stunned, really shocked, and very sad. I couldn't believe it.
The feelings of grief have been mixed with anger over the possible involvement of the paparazzi in Diana's death. No one was more bitter than Diana's brother, who spoke from his home in South Africa.
That I always believed the press would kill her in the end. But not even I could imagine that they would take such a direct hand in her death, as seems to be the case.
In England, the mood has been sombre and subdued. The Queen and Prince Philip left Balmoral, the royal family's Scottish retreat, for a nearby church service. Buckingham Palace has now confirmed Prince Charles will fly out today to Paris to bring Diana's body back to London. The princess's two sisters will join him on the flight. The Royal Air Force plane is expected to arrive back in England with Diana's body sometime early tomorrow morning, Australian time. Dignitaries and world leaders were soon paying their tributes to Diana, but few were as moving as that delivered by British Prime Minister Tony Blair.
She was the people's princess. And that's how she will stay, how she will remain in our hearts and in our memories forever.
Mark Burrows, National 9 News, London.
Meanwhile, French police are still investigating the crash, which occurred at high speed in a road tunnel near the centre of Paris.
French police rushed to the accident in central Paris just after midnight, unaware inside the mangled wreckage, arguably the most famous woman in the world. Diana, Princess of Wales, was in the back seat of the Mercedes-Benz with her new companion, the millionaire Dodi Al Fayed. Some witnesses reported the car was being pursued at speed by photographers on motorcycles just before it crashed in an underpass not far from the Eiffel Tower.
I was one of the first three people in the tunnel. The driver was unconscious, sounding the horn for probably almost 2 minutes.
Saw a large blue Mercedes, darker blue. We didn't know who it was at the time. Somebody came running towards us, speaking French, shouting in French, and we thought for some reason it was going to blow up in the tunnel.
Police quickly confirmed Dodi Al Fayed and the car's driver had been killed instantly, a bodyguard seriously injured. Rescuers took more than an hour to cut Diana from the wreckage, but early reports suggested she had just a broken arm, cuts and concussion. It seemed a miraculous escape considering the shocking, twisted remains of the car. But then at the hospital where she was being treated, the news that sent shock around the world.
Tonight's accident is a terrible tragedy. The death of the Princess of Wales fills us all with deep shock and with deep grief.
Doctors said Diana had suffered serious internal injuries. They'd battled desperately, but she died of a lung hemorrhage 4 hours after the crash. The Princess of Wales officially pronounced dead just before 1 o'clock Australian time this afternoon.
I am greatly shocked by this news. Our first thoughts must be with her children and with her family at this time of immense loss to them.
Diana and Dodi, constant companions in recent months, had just arrived in Paris earlier in the day and dined at the Ritz Hotel, owned along with Harrods by Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed. The two were followed when they left. Their driver, also killed, had been a security guard at the hotel. French police, suddenly faced with a mammoth investigation, immediately detained 7 paparazzi and impounded several of their motorcycles. They are now being questioned about claims they were involved in a high-speed pursuit of the princess, that some even took photographs just seconds after the smash. One was reportedly bashed by shocked onlookers. France has strict laws protecting the privacy of individuals. It's been suggested already that if police can prove the photographers in any way contributed to the accident, it's possible manslaughter charges may be laid. Of course, the role of the media in this dreadful event, particularly the paparazzi who've chased Diana around the world, is now the big issue that the French police, the British government, indeed the whole world must now ponder. For now, though, Britain and millions around the world who adored her are battling to believe it is true. Diana, the fairy tale princess, tragically dead. Daniel Blyde, National 9 News, London.
Our European correspondent Mark Burrows joins me now from London. Mark, how will Britain recover from this tragedy?
Well, I think, Peter, it's going to be very difficult, and certainly I think the only way they will recover is through a protracted period of mourning. This country is in a state of mourning. Traditionally, Britain has managed to pull together through times of crisis, through tragedies, as we've seen in the past. I think that, though, the feeling of grief in this country can only be compared to what happened some 40 years ago with the assassination of JFK. It is that profound.
Now, is there any word yet on funeral arrangements, Mark?
Nothing's been finalised at this stage, Peter. There's all sorts of talk about what is happening, but it's still pretty early days at this stage. We do believe, though, the funeral will be at Westminster Abbey. While all those details are worked out, though, there have been an amazing number of tributes coming in to Kensington Palace from leaders around the world praising Diana and her work involved with all sorts of charities.
Mark Burrows in London, thank you for talking to us tonight. Diana was the most photographed woman in the world, and already the paparazzi who followed her every move have come under attack for the tragedy. This report from Britain's ITN.
For the last 17 years, the princess's every move was followed, recorded and scrutinised by the press. Whether trying to steal a few precious moments on holiday with her children and friends, or simply trying to work out at her London gym. Photographers and editors alike knew her face, and the fairy tale that went with it would always sell. Most recently, photos taken of the princess in Saint-Tropez with Dodi Fayed sold for hundreds of thousands of pounds. The Sunday newspaper that bought them raised its price and its print run. In her interview with Panorama, the princess said she was all too aware of her value.
It took a long time to understand why people were so interested in me. But I assumed it was because my husband had done a lot of wonderful work leading up to our marriage and our relationship. But then during the years, you see yourself as a good product that sits on a shelf and sells well.
At Buckingham Palace this morning, mourners were clear about where they laid the blame.
Why did they pay so much money for the photographs? Why were the paparazzi after them? If there was no money, in the photographs, they wouldn't have been after her in the tunnel.
Whatever the difficulties of providing greater protection for those in the public eye, there will clearly now be a stronger than ever desire for change.
From the moment of Diana's engagement to Prince Charles, her life became public property. It was a dramatic change for the preschool teacher thrust into the public eye as the world's so-called fairy tale princess.
So shy she could barely face the world, but the world was enchanted by the awkward 19-year-old.
I don't know what you thought of me.
Pretty amazing.
Diana Frances Spencer was born on the 1st of July, 1961. Her parents divorcing when she was young, the future princess was sent to boarding school at the age of 9, failing her final year when she was just 16. Quite unremarkable early years, soon to be something of a fond memory, as Diana came to the threshold of marriage into the British monarchy.
I pronounce that they be man and wife together.
A new princess for Wales.
At first, it seemed the fairy tale was coming true. A marriage blessed by children. Prince William in 1982, Prince Harry 2 years later. They toured the world, Australians just as smitten as millions of others. In truth, though, royal life became a nightmare, albeit one endured in great comfort and privilege. The pressures of the role and an increasingly distant husband plunged Diana into depression, attempted suicide and bouts of bulimia. Within 10 years, the marriage was on the rocks, one reason soon clear, Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. She herself sought comfort with Major James Hewitt in an affair which also ended unhappily. Finally, divorce came at the urging of the Queen. Charles agreed, but Diana took 2 months to accept the formal split. As a single woman, she went to work on a new role, a self-proclaimed Queen of Hearts, helping charities and devoting herself to the job of raising her sons. Most recently, she embarked on a campaign to rid the world of landmines. But even as she toured Bosnia, the spotlight was taken away by her own private life, the exposé of her affair with Dodi Al-Fayed. The frenzied coverage obscured the fact that Diana had found happiness again. Mark Ferguson, National 9 News, London.
While world leaders have paid tribute to Princess Diana, Prime Minister John Howard has headed a long list of Australians expressing shock and sympathy over her death.
It took just minutes after the news flashed across the globe for the world to start mourning the loss of the Queen of Hearts. Stunned by the tragedy, world leaders issued statements of sympathy almost immediately after the accident. In Australia, John Howard spoke from Kirribilli House, sending a message of sympathy to the royal family before speaking publicly of his own sadness.
On behalf of the Australian government and the Australian people, I want to extend my very deep sympathy, particularly to her 2 young sons who have suffered the trauma of a marriage breakup and have now lost their mother.
She was so young and so vibrant, and she loved those kids so much. You know, it's really took my breath away, I must say.
And from the Governor-General, Sir William Deane, this statement: "May I express our deep shock and profound sympathy to you and the members of your family, especially Prince William and Prince Harry."
It hasn't really sunk in, to be honest. It's just total shock at the moment.
We were only saying the other day how happy she looks, and then for something like this to happen, just out of the blue, it's just really sad.
Messages of sympathy for Diana and her young sons, William and Harry, flooded in from around the world, including American President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary and Mother Teresa. The heartache felt by so many summed up in the words of the princess's close friend, author Jeffrey Archer.
She holds a special role in this country. She was a fairy tale princess, and we will never see the like of her again.
Christine Spiteri, National 9 News.
Briefly in other news, the Prime Minister has congratulated the Northern Territory's Country Liberal Party for its resounding win in yesterday's election, describing it as a personal triumph for Chief Minister Shane Stone. Police are on alert in the Queensland city of Mackay tonight, following a shootout this afternoon between rival bikie gangs. 6 people were taken to hospital with gunshot wounds after members of the Odin's Warriors and Outlaws gangs exchanged fire on a bridge in the city centre. Roadblocks have been set up north and south of Mackay, and residents have been warned to stay off the streets. The national weather now: showers for Perth and Sydney, rain in Adelaide, mainly fine in Melbourne and Hobart, and fine in the other capitals. That's all for this special edition of National 9 News. We'll keep you up to date throughout the early hours of the morning and have all the latest on this tragedy in the Today Show. For the moment, it's good night.